In Phoenix City, Alabama, a determined and celebrated young woman experiences a life-changing event. Cherished by her loved ones, her family and friends gather at the hospital in sport. Who could have possibly wanted to hurt this vibrant young woman? Detectives are dedicated to uncovering the truth, driven by the hope and strength of her devoted family and friends. What happens when love becomes fatal? This is the Fatal Attraction Podcast with Deadly Obsession.
September 13th, 2015. It's Sunday night in Phoenix City, Alabama, a gritty town of 40,000 just across the Chattahoochee River from Columbus, Georgia.
Columbus is relatively prosperous. It's got a beautiful downtown on the river with coffee shops and art galleries. And Phoenix City, it is known as one of the toughest towns in the Southeast.
Every time you turn around on the news, you were hearing something about something happening in Phoenix City.
So it's not out of the ordinary when Phoenix City police receive a flurry of midnight calls from a rundown stretch of houses on 16th Street.
Neighbors reported hearing shots, but they didn't know where the shots were coming from.
Police respond to the area, but find all is quiet.
They did a sweep and it was weird because there was no body, there was no casings or shells.
Just boarded up houses and overgrown lots.
They can't find a scene, so they're baffled. Who fired those shots and did they hit anybody?
A partial answer comes just a few minutes later.
Phoenix City Police Department received a call from the Columbus Police Department.
We got a victim at the hospital.
Somebody drove a gunshot victim to the hospital in Columbus and took that person to the emergency room.
Hey, I need some help over here.
Tell me what happened.
She's been shot.
Her name was Mariah Farrow.
19-year-old Mariah Farrow was the kind of young woman who lit up a room.
My best friend was everything. She was fun. She was always smiling. She was always positive.
She was a very outgoing person.
You met Mariah and you didn't know her. You fell in love with her the day you talked to her because she had that kind of personality.
She was a genuine friend.
She made everybody around her feel like love.
Though her parents were separated, Mariah remained close to both of them.
They both loved her very much and they would do anything in the world for her.
Mariah was my firstborn. She was spoiled. Everywhere I went, if I could take her, she went with me every step of the way.
Mariah meant the world to me. Mariah was everything.
Mariah was also extremely close to her many siblings.
They looked up to her.
They were like best friends.
Of course, she was the star because she was old and she liked to run the show.
She was always in the spotlight, always wanted to be on camera, always wanted to be on video.
Her head-turning good looks always attracted the boys' attention, too.
She was this pretty, tall, slender, always smiling girl. And she did get a lot of attention.
This girl was beautiful.
Although throughout high school, Mariah only had eyes for one young man, Clarence Weston.
They went everywhere together. They went to her senior prom together.
As inseparable as they seemed, Mariah and Clarence eventually drifted apart.
They broke up shortly after graduation.
They were together for a very long time, and I don't know what happened.
Whatever caused the breakup, Mariah never looked back.
She had a lot of ambition.
She was a very smart girl. She loved to work.
Her first main priority was to get her education.
She wanted to be a lawyer. That was the plan. And I initially told Mariah to stay at home for a year for college. And then after that year, if she was still serious, I would transfer her to UGA.
She had just arrived at Columbus State University She was planning on majoring in criminal justice. She wanted to be a prosecutor. She wanted to make her community better.
She had a mouthpiece on her. She can talk her way out a lot of stuff. So I kind of think she had that mentality to go into that field.
Even while she focused on her studies, Mariah remained in the spotlight.
She was modeling on the side.
She loved fashion.
She was into eyelashes. She was into the wigs, the makeup, everything like that. As far as clothing, she knew how to dress and everything.
She was very multi-talented.
But most of all, the college freshman was enjoying her first taste of adulthood.
Her group of friends, they took trips down south to Panama City Beach.
She loved to travel and see new things.
She really did bring a good time everywhere she went.
She was out doing what she wanted to do, living her life.
She was going to school, making new friends in college, just having a whole new world to explore, and knowing that she can do anything she wants.
But now, Mariah has been rushed to a Columbus hospital, her life hanging in the balance.
She had been shot several times.
She had bullet wounds inside her throat and right here toward her heart.
The surgeons were ferociously working on her to try to see if they could save her life.
While surgeons rush her into surgery, detectives will need to begin their hunt for the shooter, unless he's already in their midst.
She was taken to the hospital by an unknown individual.
How can this happen?
I'm like, I don't even know who this is.
Detectives are on the hunt, unraveling what occurred that night in Phoenix, Alabama.
After a recent breakup with her longtime boyfriend, 19-year-old Mariah Farrow was focused on her future.
She was going to college. She wanted to be a lawyer.
She wanted to be somebody.
The world could have been her oyster.
But now, this promising young woman is fighting for her life.
Come on! The phone call came in, and they was like, you need to get to the hospital. Your daughter's in surgery. And I said, surgery? What's she in surgery for?
Someone had wrote me on Facebook. He was like, call me ASAP. So I called him. And when I called him, he was like, your friend Mariah, she just got shot.
I dropped the phone immediately, and I ran out of the door.
I was running through lights. I ain't care police got behind me or nothing. When it came to her, I'm on it.
While family and friends are racing to the hospital, Phoenix City detectives arrive and find the young man who'd brought Mariah to the emergency room.
There's a witness number one that must be spoken to.
19-year-old Josh Campbell tells detectives that he'd only just met Mariah.
Apparently, he and Mariah had been talking, so Mariah picked him up that day to hang together.
You were with her when she got shot? Yeah, I was.
The investigators asked him to walk them through what happened, take him back to before the shooting started.
Josh says that a little before midnight, he and Mariah had driven over to Phoenix City.
Apparently there was some type of bootlegger house over there, and they went to that house to get something to drink. Mariah was sitting in the car. She never got out.
According to Josh, a young man approached him as he walked up to the house.
He was just like, is that Mariah's car or whatever? So I guess the boy answered and was like, yeah, that's her car.
And that's when it happened.
The guy, he got in front of the car and he just started shooting.
He shot up the car, basically.
He just emptied the gun and drove off.
And what did you do?
I tried to help Mariah.
Mariah!
He said he got back in the car to take her to the hospital.
He said that he was trying to hold pressure on her wounds, and he immediately drove her to the medical center.
Mariah, stay with me. Come on.
But she was limp when he took her out to take her into the hospital.
Based on his story, Josh did everything he could to save Mariah.
From my understanding, he walked into the emergency room and said, "My girl's been shot."
But he's unable or unwilling to help detectives find the shooter.
The guy with the gun. Can you describe him?
Nah, man. It all happened too fast, man.
It's a little curious how much he really saw.
He is, however, able to confirm the location where the shooting occurred.
This particular neighborhood is a kind of a dodgy, sketchy kind of location. It's known for drugs.
Maybe they were there to buy him more than just alcohol that night.
That's where law enforcement said, I don't think he's our guy. He has information, and we'll keep an eye on him, but we don't think he's our guy.
But can they trust Josh's version of events? After running his name through their database, detectives aren't so sure.
He had just gotten out of jail that same night.
Josh had been arrested in connection with a series of burglaries. However, he was released on bail that evening.
With Mariah still in surgery and sensing that Josh may not be telling them the whole truth, detectives head across the river to Phoenix City and the scene of the shooting.
They attempted to canvass, meaning that they were trying to talk to any witnesses, any neighbors, anybody that heard anything.
The question is, will they talk to the police?
It's a poor neighborhood, a drug-infested neighborhood.
Sadly, many times folks in tough neighborhoods just don't want to get involved in the criminal justice system.
But this time, the detectives catch a lucky break.
There was a guy sitting on his front porch who saw the car drive off shortly after the gunshots.
So it was the car that got shot up?
No, it was the other car.
The shooter?
Yeah, must have been.
He reported seeing a guy get out of a white car, heard shots, and then that car took off.
If true, it appeared unlikely that Josh could have been the shooter.
Yeah, you say that this was a white car.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, not really.
The neighbor could not see distinctly who the person was.
You didn't get a tag number, but nonetheless, it did allow them a very generalized description of the vehicle.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, officer.
That ended up being one of the first clues as to what happened and who was involved.
While detectives continue their canvass of the neighborhood, the vigil at the hospital continues.
Of course, they're worried out of their mind.
We had limited information, and we didn't know what to do, but just pray at the time. That's all we could do.
I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, please let her come out of surgery, okay?
When the surgeon finally steps into the waiting room to speak with Mariah's parents, it's clear the news isn't good.
She didn't make it.
Her wounds were too great, and she died in surgery.
Everyone just instantly started crying. Emotions was all over it.
This was their baby girl. This was their angel. Take me to my daughter! This was heartbreaking for this family.
All that time I had been sitting there praying. She was already gone.
Although a friend had rushed Mariah Farrow to the hospital after a mysterious gunman shot her multiple times, the 19-year-old's family has just been informed that she has died in surgery.
The surgeons who were working on Mariah had done everything that they could.
When she came in, she was pulseless and she wasn't breathing. And they worked on her, but they just couldn't bring her back.
This was their baby girl. This was their angel. This was somebody that they felt was gonna go out and conquer the world. And at 19 years old, it's over? That's it?
Losing a child, that's hard for anybody. But when it's to violence, it's really, really horrible. You get a whole nother department of emotions. You just can't believe it.
I need to see my daughter. Ain't nobody trying to let me see my daughter. Take me to my daughter! So I done started getting angry. I ain't getting the answer that I wanted. I got to a point where I just lost it. I lost it. So they finally told me, all right, we'll let you see your daughter.
Okay, come on. I'll bring you to her. I'll bring you to her.
When news of Mariah's passing reaches detectives, they head directly to the hospital to speak with her family.
Their immediate reaction was to ask the family, of course, any guidance, any clues that you could give us.
Their family was devastated, but they have to put that shock aside to try to assist the police with as much information as they can.
Not that the family has much information to give.
Now, she was brought in by a Josh Campbell. Does that name ring any bells?
No, I've never heard of Josh. I'm like, I don't even know who this is.
They don't know of anyone who would want to harm Mariah either.
She was liked by everybody. She was sweet. She never had a mean thing to say to anybody.
And has she ever been in any trouble?
No, never. She was respectful. Mariah knew wrong from right, and she knew good from bad.
She was a great person. We was never just on any drum or anything.
Mariah was a responsible individual. She kept up with her studies.
Do you know if she took any drugs?
Absolutely not.
Drugs did not play a part in the kind of life Mariah was creating for herself.
In fact, Mariah's father mentions a recent change of heart she'd had toward pursuing a relationship with God.
She called me that weekend and she said, Dad, I want to go to church. So, you know, my eyes got this big. I'm like, you want to go to church?
It was so out of the ordinary for her.
They had not been to church together in years.
I'm like, okay, I see. I'll be waiting on you. So Sunday came, she knocking on the door on time and everything.
He was just happy to have been able to spend that time and celebrate that time at church with his daughter.
And then in church, she said the most amazing thing to me.
She happened to make this statement about she wanted to do better. She wanted to be better. And he didn't quite understand what she meant by that statement.
But now Mariah's father believes he does understand.
She probably had a premonition, but she didn't know what that premonition was. And she probably was trying to get right.
You know, some people say you feel like when something finna happen to you. So I'm guessing she had that feeling.
And then hours later, she's dead? It's chilling.
The question for detectives is what might have caused Mariah's strange premonition.
The family was aware that she was going through some things, through some sort of stress, and was a little concerned, maybe not quite herself.
And what kind of things?
Her ex Clarence, they broke up. They were together all the time, and then all of a sudden, they weren't together anymore.
Something just didn't feel right.
And according to Mariah's mom, it went deeper than just a feeling.
She mentioned that he was abusive.
Detectives are on the hunt, unraveling what occurred that night in Phoenix, Alabama.
Mariah Farrow's mother has revealed that her daughter may have suffered abuse at the hands of her ex-boyfriend, Clarence Weston.
Mariah mentioned to me previously that the reason why she broke up with one of her exes, she says, was because of domestic violence.
Was it possible that Clarence had taken revenge on Mariah?
That's why when this happened, I thought it was him.
Detectives waste no time, and early the following morning, they bring Clarence in for questioning.
I suppose you heard Mariah Farrow was killed last night.
Everybody's talking about it, but it doesn't seem real.
One of the things that law enforcement is trained to do is get that response from the potential suspect.
He really did seem genuinely upset.
But when the detectives probe deeper, he becomes evasive.
We were told you two broke up recently. Is that true?
We did.
Why was that?
I don't know, man. We were just going in different directions.
He claimed that the breakup had been a mutual decision.
Well, we heard that you've been abusive.
Who told you that?
He really did seem to get defensive.
I never laid a hand on her.
Okay. Where were you last night?
I was home.
Clarence says that he stayed home and watched television.
Did anybody back that up?
No. I haven't spoken to Mariah in weeks. Are y'all charging me with anything?
No. You're free to go.
Detectives are unconvinced of Clarence's story, but can they prove that he's Mariah's killer?
Without a confirmed alibi, Clarence was still suspect.
It's definitely possible that the alleged abuse from Clarence escalated to killing, but they needed more information.
However, soon after their interview, another witness comes forward with information that will send the case in a whole new direction. Her name is Sheila Bishop.
You said you had some information for us?
She told police that Mariah had been acting strange recently.
It all started when she met this guy, Demetrius.
18-year-old Demetrius Dorsey was from Phoenix City.
One of the girls that is Mariah's best friend, the guy that's her child's father, he was from Phoenix City, and they all kind of were hanging out or over there, and that's probably how they connected.
So what's a girl like you doing in Phoenix City?
What kind of a girl do you think I am?
The kind that doesn't belong here.
Growing up, he never had much of nothing, and him meeting Mariah was like gold because he had never been with anybody as beautiful as Mariah.
And Mariah had never been with anyone like Demetrius.
He wasn't in school. He didn't seem to be ambitious in the way that Mariah was. He carries himself through life a little differently. They were more like opposites that attracted.
She was feeling all edgy and rebellious, but I could tell he was trouble.
Sheila didn't care for Demetrius, his spirit and his energy.
He came from a rougher part of town. They were on two divergent paths, and he was not good for Mariah.
Sheila says that Mariah had soon come to the same realization.
She started seeing his true colors. He had become jealous.
He seemed to try to isolate her from her friends, try to dominate her thoughts, and keep her in his circle where he could control her.
Where have you been?
I was out.
Where have you been?
I was out. Demetrius, let me go.
Without telling me?
Jeez.
Apparently, he had grabbed her by her arm. She had bruising on her arms. Her friends knew about it. I didn't.
Why are you acting like a jerk?
Don't talk back to me.
An argument got so heated that Demetrius struck her. It was jarring, to say the least.
Sheila says it was also a wake-up call for Mariah.
She made the decision to end the relationship.
So she texts him the next day and says, "We're done. It's over."
The relationship had lasted less than 2 months, but Demetrius refused to let it go.
A lot of these young men, they don't want to hear the word no.
Demetrius started with pleas to have her back.
According to Sheila, when the pleas didn't work, Demetrius had tried a different approach.
He became threatening.
What kind of threats?
He was saying he was going to beat her up. Stuff like that.
Sheila says Mariah had shrugged the whole thing off.
After the breakup, she didn't take much of anything he said seriously.
But now that Mariah's dead, detectives suspect Demetrius's words were more than idle threats.
I'll walk you out, Sheila.
If somebody tell you they hate you, believe it. If somebody say they gonna do something to you, believe it.
A quick background check on Demetrius only adds to their suspicion.
Where did Demetrius live? Very close to where the homicide took place.
Same part of the city, same neighborhood. That is sending red flags up for the investigators.
After reviewing Demetrius's record, detectives head to his home in Phoenix City.
Demetrius isn't there. So police talk to the family members.
They're not really dishing out a lot of information. They haven't seen him in a few days. They don't know where he's at. They haven't heard from him.
Detectives suspect Demetrius may be on the run.
They put out an APB, that's an all-points bulletin, looking for Demetrius.
And when the detectives pulled his DMV records for the APB, they made another suspicious discovery.
There it is.
Demetrius's vehicle was a match for the vehicle that the eyewitness described the night of the gunshots.
Detectives are on the hunt, unraveling what occurred that night in Phoenix, Alabama.
Detectives investigating Mariah Farrow's murder have just learned that her ex, Demetrius Dorsey, owned a vehicle matching the one a witness saw fleeing the crime scene.
Phoenix City is small, and the odds of that car matching both the description of a car leaving the scene of the shooting and owned by Demetrius, it's a pretty good lead.
But can they bring him in for questioning?
Demetrius hasn't been home or seen at his home recently.
While the search for Demetrius continues, the detectives subpoena his cell phone records, hoping to get a lead on his whereabouts.
The subpoena also gave them access to his text messages.
It is a litany of disturbing text messages between Mariah and Demetrius.
And they were stunned by how violent his text messages were.
He was sending her text messages, telling her that he was going to kill her. In one of those messages, he said, "On my life, I will kill you." Mariah responded, "Are you threatening me?" LOL, as if she did not take it seriously.
Based on when Demetrius sent that text, detectives doubt he was joking.
20 minutes after that text, she was dead.
A warrant to search Demetrius's social media accounts reveals even more damning evidence.
Less than 2 weeks before Mariah's murder, Demetrius posts this cryptic message.
Demetrius said that he either wanted to kill Mariah or beat her. And he asked, was anyone riding for her? Meaning, is anybody on Mariah's team in whatever dispute he believed that they had?
What was so interesting in this case is Demetrius Dorsey was silly enough to post on his social media his intentions to hurt Mariah.
After 37 years of practice in law, I'm continuously amazed how people self-incriminate themselves through the use of social media.
As incriminating as the threats may be, they aren't enough for an arrest.
Is that direct evidence of a homicide? It is not.
However, another post on his account does give detectives a possible lead on his whereabouts.
They discover a friend who is very close to Demetrius Dorsey. And this friend, Tyrone, had posted that he was actually with Demetrius when Mariah was killed.
Hauled in for questioning, detectives cut right to the chase.
Look, we've checked your social media posts, and we know that you were there.
All right. Tyrone starts to figure out that he might be charged as some kind of co-defendant, perhaps in a cover-up or obstruction of justice.
With that, he begins to cooperate.
Demetrius, he had it bad for that girl.
Tyrone told police that Demetrius was very upset over their breakup and how he wants revenge.
Tyrone basically shared with them how violent that Demetrius had become. He was ranting, he was raving, he was off the meter. And Tyrone said that.
Bro, just chill.
Nah, shut up. Shut up.
Chill.
She gonna get what's coming to her, man.
However, according to Tyrone, what really drove Demetrius into a rage was the news that Mariah had been talking to Josh.
Somehow, according to Tyrone, Demetrius found out that Josh and Mariah were planning to meet that night.
This took Demetrius over the edge. He went ballistic.
She's dead.
Demetrius storms out, and Tyrone, in good conscience, thought it best to go with him and hopefully prevent him from doing something that he would regret.
Tyrone says that he and Demetrius drove over to the house on 16th Street, figuring Josh would turn up sooner or later.
It was where all the teens in Phoenix City went to get liquor.
They waited outside the house for some time.
Tyrone said that when Mariah and Josh pulled up, Demetrius got out of the car.
So did Josh. As Josh walked up to the porch, Demetrius approached the car.
While she was sitting in the car, Demetrius shot through the windshield and killed her.
How's that for LOL?
Something broke in him.
He could not handle the rejection.
What started out as, "Can I have you back?" became, "If I can't have you, nobody can."
Tyrone says he saw the whole thing.
Tyrone told the police that he heard 3 quick, in succession shots and realized that Demetrius had shot Mariah.
But there's still one more thing that detectives need.
He gives police the address to where Demetrius is staying.
They go to that location and they arrest him.
But when they get him back to the precinct, he lawyers up.
He refuses to talk to the police.
The detectives inform Mariah's family that a suspect is in custody.
Investigators are convinced this is the guy.
I was relieved that they had caught him because I didn't want him out there on the streets.
But the family is shocked to learn his identity.
We didn't know about him. Nobody knew about him.
Out of all the male friends that she had, that was the one guy I never met.
But now that the family and the prosecutors know all about Demetrius, they're determined to see that he faces serious consequences.
The family wanted the death penalty in this case. They wanted it badly.
I wanted justice for her.
But will Mariah's family get the justice they long for?
I was angry that it was taking so long.
We really didn't know what the outcome was going to be.
It just wasn't right.
Detectives are on the hunt, unraveling what occurred that night in Phoenix, Alabama.
One year after allegedly gunning down his ex-girlfriend, Mariah Farrow, Demetrius Dorsey sits in jail awaiting trial.
This was a capital murder case. So, worst case scenario, he could have gotten a death penalty.
But Demetrius will have to stand trial first.
It was taking so long to get him to court. It's like every time we turned around, his lawyer was saying he needs a mental health exam because he's not in his right mind. Every time we were thinking that we were going to go to trial, something happened where he had to be reevaluated.
Mariah's family soon faces another devastating blow.
The prosecutor's star witness decides not to speak at the trial.
Tyrone backs out. He no longer will testify to what he experienced that night that Mariah was shot.
Tyrone knew that Demetrius was violent. He had already just committed a homicide right in front of him. He was scared of Demetrius, or maybe Demetrius's friends, that somebody would wreak revenge. On the street, it's called snitches get stitches.
That's why he copped out the last minute.
With Tyrone recanting his statement and no physical evidence tying him or Demetrius to the crime, the prosecution isn't certain they have enough to secure a conviction at trial.
When Tyrone chose not to testify, their case was rail thin.
No one saw him there. No one put the gun in his hand. No one put him on the scene except Tyrone. He was the only eyewitness.
So without him, of course, the DA had to make some concessions. There were negotiations back and forth, and finally, on the eve of all of this, Demetrius decided to take a plea deal. A plea deal that would require him to plead guilty to life in prison with the possibility of parole.
This young man not only received a life sentence with the possibility of parole, but he's eligible for parole in 2030.
The possibility that Demetrius could be back on the street before he turns 30 is a slap in the face for Mariah's family, a feeling Mariah's mother makes known to the court at his sentencing hearing.
I printed the pictures of her laying there on the table, intubated, and I made a big old copy of it. And I showed it to him, and I told him, look at what you did. I told him, I hope you rot in hell. Honestly to God, I still mean I hope he rots in hell, because he can still eat, he can still breathe, he can still see his family, he can still talk to his family, but I can never see my daughter again.
While Demetrius sits in prison, Mariah's family is making sure her death wasn't in vain by helping raise awareness against teen domestic violence.
It's gonna take organizations. It's gonna take a lot of involvement from parents, other teens, people that been through it, people that's going through it. Because without them, their stories can't be heard. So we're focusing on trying to start making group meetings where we can, talk to kids, go to schools.
Even though this was a tragedy, something good is coming out of this. All Things Mariah is a foundation that I am going to start on, and I want to be an outreach to others.
People don't know about the large percentage of teenagers, 14 to 18, that are victims of domestic violence within their own peer group.
We have to educate, especially young people, about the dangers of these relationships, where to turn, who to turn to be able to get out of this.
If you're getting abused, let somebody know. Go to your parents, they can help you the most.
Involvement is the key. Kids hate when your parents are all in your business, but we're in your business for a reason. It's not that we trying to just be nosy or whatever, but we need to know if something happened.
Most of all, friends and family are vigilant to do everything they can to keep Mariah's memory alive.
When it's time for her birthday, we have parties for her.
We go out to the cemetery and we do the balloons, we do the flowers.
We try to make it a fun day instead of making it a sad day.
But the sadness is always there under the surface.
It's been so hurtful, and even though this year will be 7 years, I'm still trying to heal.
She was very important to us, very.
We would do anything to have her back. She was everything. She was full of life.
I miss hearing her tell me she loved me. If she was here, that'd be probably all I say all day.
Mariah means a lot to a whole lot of people. Mariah was a sister. Mariah was a granddaughter. Mariah was a lot to a lot of people. And she's forever going to be remembered that way. And she's forever going to be missed.
It's truly unsettling when someone believes they have ownership over another person. While some breakups are straightforward and both parties remain amicable, there are times when the rejected partner becomes harmful in some situations. Unfortunately, the tragedy that unfolded here reminds us that we can never fully know someone. Mariah Farrell's family and friends will always hold her close in their hearts, making certain that her vibrant spirit and their cherished memories of her will continue to shine brightly in their lives forever. Teen domestic violence exists, and together we must find a way to help protect our loved ones.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
Coming up on the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
He was a caring son and brother who was trying to turn his life around.
He spent time in prison, but when he got out, he left that world behind him.
And when he found love, it seemed like they would help each other reach new heights. But after he's found murdered inside his home, the couple's upward trajectory comes crashing down.
A man seeking to transform his life after receiving a second chance finds his envisioned future obtainable. Will his dreams come to fruition? Tune in to the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.